It is episode 3 of the Secrets Podcast. I am Tiffany Gaines. If you have not already done so, please follow my fingers, click the subscribe button, check out my other videos, hit like if you like them. We're going to claim that you do. But please hit like and subscribe so you'll be notified whenever I do a new video. I'm going to effort right now to do a video every couple weeks. I still work full time, so I want to be fair to my job and I want to be fair to my podcast. I don't want to throw together material and cheat the process. So this is episode 3, and I just want to wrap with you guys for a little bit about, I think, maybe about forgiveness and vulnerability as it relates to forgiveness. We all know people who are grudge holders, right? We know people who are grudge holders, and sometimes, now listen, sometimes you can't get over something. Sometimes it takes you a minute, and it takes you a minute to get past some things, to forgive a person or a situation with a person. But I think people who hold forgiveness hostage are probably not the safest people to be vulnerable with. So think about forgiveness. Like, how could I paint a picture of forgiveness? If I could paint a picture of forgiveness, I would think about open pores, something being able to just kind of run through, you know, um, you know, a healthy lung. I think about a healthy lung when I think about forgiveness. You can breathe easily, right? But in contrast, if you think about forgiveness and people who are unforgiving, you think about, or should think about, blockages. Your pores are closed, no fresh air can come in, and difficulty breathing because you're holding a space for, you know, congestion or clogging. And thus and therefore, you also can't be vulnerable. Open pores, something can easily come in. And so I think people who hold forgiveness hostage, or people who are grudge holders, are not always safe people to be vulnerable with. And if you're thinking spiritually, even, and not forgiving a person for a situation, if we want to have a connection to source, being, God, however you relate to the ultimate being, and there's something that's blocking the most intimate connection that you can have with the spiritual being, you know, your, what do they call it? Your shield. Forgiveness, this lack of forgiveness is the shield that's keeping a relationship, or keeping you from bonding completely. Because how can something as pure as a relationship with God, right? How can something as pure as a relationship with a higher being come into a place, come into your heart, if there's blockages, if your holes are full of resentment, negative energy, um, you know, did I say resentment? Um, Hatred, all of these things would prevent you from receiving a the full breath of love from God, right? Imagine being able to take a deep breath and you can't. I would call that a blockage. If you got a little bronchitis and you got a little bacteria in your lung, you can't take a deep breath. And I feel like forgiveness keeps our emotional pores clogged, and it keeps something else from coming in. It could be love, It could be a blessing, it could be a job, it could be an opportunity. But forgiveness frees you up to be able to receive the next best thing that could happen to you. I learned that thing probably over the last couple of years. And once I realized that, if I'm holding a grudge against someone, what I could be missing out on, because how do I know that my intuitive receptors are not off? And it could be something that you don't even think about. You think, we think, well, if we're not talking to that individual, or if we don't see that individual, that it's all good. But you're still holding that energy space for that thing with that individual. And I just don't think it's worth it. I think we always want to put ourselves in a place where we can always have clear lungs to receive any and everything that life has to offer us. And if there's something in the way, a grudge, you know, something that you haven't forgiven from a person or forgiven of a person, if there's anything in the way that's blocking what is supposed to be the next greatest thing or the next best thing that happened to you, I would investigate areas of forgiveness. I would investigate areas of forgiveness with people, pray for, you know, a willing spirit to forgive an individual, pray for understanding about the situation so that you can release it, because resistance is what causes suffering. Resisting a situation, resisting the isness of a situation is what causes our suffering. Fighting the isness of a situation. Once we accept something for what it is, then we're able to move past it, let it go, move on. You know, we've all been offended by somebody and we've just kind of let that thing go. But sometimes it's when it's people that are close to us or people who we feel like should hold us in better regard. Sometimes it's those people who have hurt us and we hold a little bit more resentment. We hold an energy space, a negative energy space against that individual. And so we have to be careful because we don't know what we're missing out on, what's being passed over, what's not able to penetrate um, our soul, our being, if we've got a shield over our hearts. And you can't dictate, you can't decide as much as you think you can, what you may be missing or what you may miss out on by not forgiving a person or a situation with a person. Um, the other thing about forgiveness is if you know somebody who is a serious grudge holder, is that a person that you can be vulnerable with? Is that a person that you can be completely open to? Is that a person who's going to be completely accountable to your feelings? Can a grudge holder, a forever grudge holder, be accountable for someone else's feelings? Because how do you know? We all make mistakes. I don't think any of us really have the right to hold forgiveness option, especially if you're looking at it in the spiritual sense. Golly, if you think of God in a traditional sense, and um, how do any of us get to really hold our foot down on transgression from someone else? As raggedy as we are as humans, whether we've been raggedy to that person or raggedy to someone else or even raggedy to yourself, how do we get to hold our foot down and put our foot on forgiveness towards someone else? We have no rights to forgiveness. I mean, we're all human, flawed human beings. And I find that forgiveness is one of the things that we think least about with regard to blocking blessings, blocking uh, life bonuses, opportunities. And so if you find yourself with or around a person who is so unforgiving. I would also be leery and beware of that person not always or not being a person that you can be safe with, be vulnerable with, because I guarantee you they're not going to be vulnerable with you or not be truly self aware in their vulnerability with you. Meaning, excuse me, self aware meaning observing the situations or things that they may not have been their best self with, observant of hurts that they've caused, and being willing to take ownership and right those things. If they're not forgiving, they're not being self aware, then how are they safe? Um, so I think we should just kind of take survey of the land, and even with ourselves. Hey, if we are holding a grudge against someone, think about where you're blocking. Think about your heart being blocked. Think about what can't penetrate, what you're preventing, how you're clogging your intuitive emotions, how you're clogging your spiritual intuition. You don't know what the blinders are. We don't know what the emotional clogs are. We don't know what the spiritual clogs are, the blockages, the opportunities, the blessings that we're missing out on. So I try to make it a habit. If I am bothered about something with someone, man, I immediately, if I'm just really in it, I now I pray for the will to forgive, the will to understand, and the will to let go and move on. Because the last thing that I want is to be blocked, blessing blocked, BB. Don't want to be blessing blocked. And internalizing negativity, the way we can look at a president and see the stress of 4 years, we minimize how negative energy affects disease. And so if you can see life on a person's face, on the outside of their face, imagine what trauma that the insides of a person's body must be going through, the inner trauma that we put our bodies through when we hold in stress, negativity, resentment, forgiveness. When we hold all those things in, we underestimate what that energy does to us. And so I think forgiveness is an easy thing to think about. It's something we all want to be, a recipient of. We all want to be forgiven because we've all done something, you know. And so I would pay attention to forgiveness and being vulnerable in forgiveness. Unclog your emotional pores and allow whatever's for you to come to you. Because if you're holding your hand out, you don't know what you're blocking. And not forgiving, you're holding your hand out. You're blocking something. So that's what I got for episode 3. I didn't want to be too long-winded. In a couple of weeks, I got a special podcast coming up with my bride. We'll sit down, we'll talk about some things, some of our experiences, how we came together. I think our story is interesting. I think it'll be enlightening and to some people, provide some information, release some stereotypes. But yeah, that'll be coming up in a couple of weeks and introduce you to her personality. She's a great lady and my biggest cheerleader. So look for that coming up in the next couple of weeks. Right now, I'm about to serve up this wonderful meal that I have prepared. Got some black-eyed peas going and some pork country ribs and some cornbread, a little rice and gravy. She might slip $5 on the counter to tip me tonight. Maybe not. She ain't gonna give me no money. But anyway, hope you enjoyed episode 3. Remember, click like, Click subscribe. Let me know your thoughts. I appreciate you.